all the time. They go racing up my road, hitting the Hood Road to race down there by the old cow pasture down there. And they run up down Hood Road. So I'll tell you,
Can't spend what you don't have.
Hood Road now.
Okay, all right.
No. They pass my house. You can just zoom it.
How you doing, sir?
Got three little remarks. Call it a day. You might write my prayer down. They can open it back up.
Thank you.
All right, that's how much. One minute till, sir.
1 minute.
They fog up. He was an Air National Guard F-16 pilot. Graduated high school with me. He had to retire from the NMF. He lived in Cobblestone for a while, then he moved back up to Virginia. Years old. He was a commercial airline pilot, and he was an F-16 pilot. He went to the first Gulf War with the 169th.
We'll see.
How did I know Dave? We grew up all our lives together. High school. Graduated in 77, but we went to elementary school, middle school, junior high together. 77.
About 20 years after you. 10 years before me. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll call to order the monthly meeting of the Blythewood Town Council. Tonight is Monday, September 28th. The time is 7 p.m. I'll ask Mr. Yarborough, please, to conduct roll call. Here.
Present.
Here.
Here. Here.
Town clerk could not be here tonight, so sitting in is Miss Sarah Yarborough. So I ask you, Mr. Yarborough, was notification and posting of the meeting agenda done in accordance with state law? Thank you. Gentlemen, before you is tonight's agenda, and I'll be looking for a motion to approve the agenda.
Mr. Mayor, one correction. In section 1, paragraph C, approval of the agenda, it says Councilman DeBrock made a motion to remove item 5 under action items. The motion was seconded by Councilman Griffin. That should actually be Councilman Sloan Griffin.
Oh, you mean the minutes from last month's meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're
I'm a
just
little
talking
ahead.
about this agenda.
I'm ahead.
That's all right. We'll
I
get there.
apologize, Mr. Mayor.
That's okay.
I make a motion to approve today's agenda. Jackie.
Been probably moved and seconded to approve the agenda as written. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The agenda is approved. Ladies and gentlemen, please join Councilman Don Brock as he leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. The flag is to your rear.
I'll make sure I don't miss this. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Join me in prayer. Heavenly Father, we come before you with open hearts and open minds as we collectively engage in the business of the town of Blythewood. We thank you for the wonderful weather we've had as of late and ask for continued good weather as we transition into an unknown fall. Lord, during these uncertain times, we ask that you bring your grace and love to the Bannister family as they ask why Demi was taken from us. We also ask that you bring your grace and love to the Peterson family as they ask the same question. Grant us wisdom and solace to know that you ultimately have a plan for everyone and everything, and that you alone are the path to salvation. We thank you for blessing our town, blessing our citizens, and providing the path of righteousness for us to follow. We ask for your shining grace on our military, domestic and abroad, first responders, police, and fire, not just locally, but nationwide. We ask that you heal our divided nation, bring forth calm and understanding. We all rest easy. In you all pray.
Please be seated. Thank you. Now we will move to council members' remarks, and tonight we'll go from the eldest to the youngest. So Councilman Larry Griffin, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. Glad you were able to come out. Not very much, Mr. Mayor, except for I think we talked about the Pop Warner that came through. That's all been straightened out. I think Will is supposed to be here. So he may be here. The second thing was the big grab. I heard it was successful, but it wasn't as thick as it was the previous years, as well as the Red Barn Jam. I heard it was successful as well, but they didn't have the crowd that they expected. Other than that, we're just looking forward to Oktoberfest. It's coming up, and pass it back to you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Mayor Pro Tem Baltman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't think I can add anything, but just welcome everybody. Glad to see everybody here tonight. We appreciate your input on the items that are on our agenda. I did attend the Summer Jam, and I thought it was well attended, you know. The weather was nice. Band was good, so I thought they had a really good crowd. I know it might not have exceeded 2,000 how they had planned, but I think it was well over 1,000 people there. Looked pretty nice to me. Just on that other note, she's going to start her first Warrior Path class here in a couple of weeks over at the Big Red Barn, so they'll be welcoming those veterans in here in the next couple of weeks to do that program over there, and we just wish her all the best because we do appreciate what she does for our veterans out there. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councilman Don Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also attended the Big Red Barn Summer Jam, and it appeared that a nice time was had by all, and it was very nice weather, as Councilman Baldwin alluded to. I had the pleasure of playing in the Chambers Par 3 Palooza a couple of Wednesdays ago. I did not finish last. We finished next to last. So I consider that a success, considering I hadn't hit a golf ball in 10 years. And congrats to Phil and his group at the Chamber. It was a very fun, very well-organized event. And my last comment is I would like to extend my personal condolences to Melissa Cowan and her family for the loss of her cousin, Chadwick Boseman, who was Marvel's Black Panther. It's a big loss for everybody in South Carolina and in the Marvel universe. So just wanted to tell her that we're very sorry. That's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councilman Sloan Griffin.
It's good afternoon, everyone. I'm glad you all could join us this evening. Very light remarks. I just want to remind everyone that November the 6th, we will be doing movie night in the park at 7 p.m. We'll be showing the new Troll movie. So look for advertisement in the local papers, online, on Facebook, etc. on that. Book your tickets through the online panel because there'll be limited tickets. We're looking at doing either a drive-in or sitting in the circles of the squares out in the field. So bring your kids out. We'll have food trucks, popcorn, and other things out. Social distancing and hand sanitizer will be out. Wear your mask. Other than that, I thank God for health, strength, and family, and looking forward to what's next to come. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Just want to confirm, just want to remind everyone that Election Day coming up November 3rd, your last day to register in the state of South Carolina will be October 4th, I believe. So if you haven't registered, you still have a week or so, please do that and participate as good voting citizens. My colleagues have already mentioned the good events, the big grab, not a great turnout because people are being cautious, and that's not a bad thing. If people don't feel safe, don't venture out, and of course that happens. The Big Red Barn Retreat concert, although I'm not sure exactly, I guess we'll get the report back, how many attendees came. It was a good event, and people were practicing social distancing. It was well organized, and I didn't see any threats out there at all. I did also play in the Par 3 Palooza. I thought I was going to be embarrassed, but when I saw Councilman Brock showed up, I knew that was not going to be the problem at all. So it was a good time for good causes, and everyone there had a great time. With that, we will move to the approval of the minutes from our town council meeting, August 24, 2020. Councilman Brock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Apologies for earlier. Ms. Sarah Lynn, in Section 1, Paragraph C, it was Councilman Sloan Griffin who made the second on the motion that I presented, not Mr. Larry Griffin. That's all the changes I see, Mr. Mayor, and I would make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
It's been probably motioned and seconded to approve the minutes from August 24, 2020 as amended. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Now we move to section 2 tonight, public hearing. And we'll begin with item number 1, the Red Gate, an amendment to rezone property located along Blythewood, Muller, Surt Mill Roads from PD to D1. And the item numbers are 15100-10-01 and 12600-02-01. And lastly, 12700-01-21. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just remind anybody that wants to speak at this public hearing to do so at the podium, please, and speak into the microphone, as we are recording the meeting and live streaming it, so that would help us out with that. So again, this is a zoning map amendment for the Red Gate property, as it's commonly known, from Planned Development District to D1 Development District. Tax map numbers, as the mayor just read. The Planning Commission initiated a rezoning process last month on 8/3/20 after over a year of periodic discussions to rezone this approximate 143 acres. It's bordered by Blythewood, Muller, and Surt Mill Roads. The Planning Commission met on 9/8/20 and unanimously recommended the D1 zoning to council. It's approximately 143 acres. Again, this is zoned planned development. You hear sometimes planned development district or planned development, sometimes planned unit development. It's generally all the same thing. This property was zoned as such in the Richland County and annexed into the town of Blythewood. And the property has been sitting for the most part vacant since that time. This was around 2007. It's in the jurisdiction of Richland County, annexed into the town, and subsequently ordinance 10-024 it received the PD zoning in the town of Blythewood. Just briefly, a planned development district is designate an area for which approved development plan constitutes the district regulations. So in other words, it's a site-specific zoning district. The owner, in conjunction with the commission and the council at the time, this would be in Richland County and confirmed in the town of Blythewood, came up with what should have been a mixed-use project that benefits from open space and a well-planned development. Again, this goes back a ways. The property was never developed. It all later on into bank's property and foreclosed, as I understand it, and kind of sat for a while. What is being proposed today is a D1 district. This district is intended to provide for large tracts of land located primarily on the fringe of urban growth, where the predominant character of urban development has not yet been fully established. So it's basically right on the edge of town in the sense of, is it residential, is it commercial, is it something in between? So that's the classification in a nutshell of D1. The reason that the Planning Commission initiated the rezoning, ultimately, Section 155.272 of the Town of Blythewood Code of Ordinances places a time-specific condition upon the establishment of a planned development district with a mandate for the Planning Commission to initiate a rezoning under certain circumstances. That code section is listed in your packet. Again, the Planning Commission recommended a D1 zoning, as I just described. The landowners, I believe, are present today. Happy to answer any questions as staff. And lastly, the Planning Commission did unanimously recommend approval to Town Council for rezoning at the meeting on September 8th to the zoning of D1. Includes statements.
Okay, so we are here tonight to discuss this issue, and before I call forward our citizen who signed up to speak, Mr. Cook, can you address the crowd and let them know the three options that you and I spoke of that could come of tonight's meeting?
The potential three options that could be considered are for the, there'll be two readings on this, should it move forward. Council can approve it. Council can deny it. Council can deny it with the recommendation that it goes back to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission work with the property owner to come up with a amicable zoning that would meet the needs of the town and potentially the property owner. Those are generally your three options, of which there are probably a couple more, but those are your three basic options.
Council members, any questions or comments? Before I call forward Mr. Dinkins. Okay. Mr. Marshall Dinkins, the floor is yours, sir.
Sorry, I haven't worked the mic a minute. Only been a few times. Can you hear me okay?
Sir.
Thank y'all for having me tonight. I appreciate y'all at least listening to us and hearing what we have to say. Just so everybody knows, I'm Marshall Dinkins. I'm a Blythewood resident, born and raised. My address is 109 Surreywood Lane, Blythewood. I'm here to speak for my parents. I'm here to ask for a deferment of this vote tonight for Byron and Susan Dinkins. Byron has lived, worked, raised kids, and worshiped in Blythewood for over 40 years. He has also lived within a 10-mile radius of Blythewood his entire life. Susan Dinkins has also lived in Blythewood her entire life. Byron and Susan purchased this property on June 1st, 2020. He bought this property due to the fact it was represented and already zoned with commercial property. After only 2 months of ownership, a letter postmarked August 18th, 2020 was mailed to Byron and Susan Dinkins. It was days later before the letter was received and opened. This letter was mailed by the town of Blythewood. Anybody needs it, I've got a copy of that letter where it's been postmarked by the town of Blythewood. I've got the letter inside as well. Then a sign was put on the front of his property where Byron immediately reached out to his realtor to ask him what this all meant. This letter and sign explained that the Planning Commission were voting on September the 8th to downsize his property and take the commercial property away. Keep in mind, Byron is not in the habit of developing raw land and has never been through any zoning prior to this. So from the earliest possible date of notification of August 19th, 2020 to the landowner, they are telling him his land zoning is going before the Planning Commission on September the 8th, 2020. That allowed, at best, only 21 days to prepare for this vote. Now today, exactly 20 days later, this property is in front of the town council to vote on tonight. Byron and Susan feel that they have been blindsided by this. There's never been any direct contact, from anyone with the town council. Byron and Susan are easy to find. They have lived in the same location 21 years and have the same home phone number and cell numbers for over 20 years. Byron, as he learned a little bit more about the situation, set up a meeting with Brian Cook. That included his realtor, Tom Milliken, and Larry Sharp. Keep in mind, Mr. Sharp's acreage is included in this same zoning and same vote tonight. Sorry about that. At the meeting, this is the meeting they had with the realtor, Byron and Larry Sharp. At the meeting, they had an open discussion of compromise. There were talks including making the front portion of land to be rezoned town center zoning and the rear portion being downzoned to D1. Let me express the will to compromise on both sides. Throughout that meeting, it made Byron Dinkins and Larry Sharp feel very comfortable with the possibilities of compromise that could be taken in front of the town council. After the meeting concluded, several days went by, no contact, so our realtor gave Brian Cook a call. By the way, there's been nothing but positive things said about Brian Cook. Just everybody, FYI, great information. So we thank you for that, Mr. Cook. The feeling the realtor got on the phone is it did not feel as positive as the meeting went. And again, no attempt from the town to reach out to Byron Dinkins. So as I talked earlier about the short time in notice Byron and Susan received and the quick action that our Planning Commission and Town Council are taking, let's talk about the previous ownership of this property. The previous owner was Arthur State Bank for 13 years before Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins purchased on June 1st, 2020. 13 years, that means this Planning Commission and Town Council had 4,745 days to consider rezoning this 143 acres while Arthur State Bank owned it. Any new owner in this situation will feel like they are being attacked. 4,745 days versus 21 days. Within that short 21-day period now, Byron reached out to have that meeting of compromise. But again, as we said, no contact back from the town of Blythewood. One phone call or one meeting between the town council and Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins could have made tremendous strides in the right direction for compromise. What better way to understand both parties' vision than to meet about it? If this was Arthur State Bank, I don't believe there would be as much compromise from them, if any. Compromise can still happen with a deferment of this vote. With a 90-day deferment, that can allow Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins time to develop a plan that can work for everyone. In only 21 days' notice, that did not allow time to get surveyors, engineers, and architects involved. When Mr. and Mrs. Dinkins were considering the purchase of this property, they found out Arthur State Bank had spent $30,000 having the wetlands delineated and surveyed on this property. The bank did this just 2.5 years ago, and it's still good for 2.5 more. Just last year, the bank applied and received a DHEC land disturbance permit. Both the delineated wetlands and the DHEC land disturbance permit are necessary to prepare for development of property. Knowing this, the Dinkins felt as though the town didn't want to fight a bank with lawyers on retainer, but the small guy acquires the property in June, and just 2 months later, the town decides it is time for a change. One planning commission member said, we should have done this a long time ago. The timing of this taking of Byron and Susan's property really upsets them. From reading in The Voice recently, it stated that this property was discussed by the commission in 2018 and early 2019, but it was never taken further than that. Again, during that period of time, Arthur State Bank owned the property. Okay, to give everyone an idea of where this property is located in regards to the surrounding area, Richland County recently acquired 1,350 acres from Locklear Road to almost Surrett Mill Road. All of that frontage on Blythewood Road is zoned commercial, where the remainder, 9,000 feet on Community Road, is zoned industrial. To say land that has been zoned commercial for 14 years is now nearly across the street from commercial zoning, is now not deemed commercial, does not make sense to the Dinkins. Let's also not forget that Larry Sharp's property is tied into the same vote as well. His property has been prepared for a convenience store and gas station for quite some time. So please consider listening to a planned and a good compromise for everyone involved. Issue a 90-day deferment for this vote. The Dinkins will develop a plan to make the front section of land town center zoning and the rear portion of land to be zoned to D1. This gives everyone an opportunity to work together. The location of this land is best fit for town center on the front side, with Syrup Mill Road on one side and Moeller Road on the other side. Commercial property is across the street, as well as Fairfield Electric. To conclude, Byron and Susan feel that they have done all they can. Byron and Susan feel that they have done all they can within a 21-day period to reach out and express that they are willing to compromise. This was not done to the previous owner, Arthur State Bank, as I remind you, for 4,745 days they owned the property. The Dinkins have done what they can do to help the situation. We are asking the town council tonight to take the proper steps in giving us a 90-day deferment before the vote tonight is made. To the Dinkins, this would prove to them that both parties went to work together for the great town of Blythewood. I want to tell y'all thank you for your consideration. Let's all just work together. Thank y'all.
Thank you, sir. Council members.
I agree with you. I think we need to work with the ownership. I know Mr. Sharp has been working on his, getting curb cuts approved and everything from DOT on his piece of property, and even though the road widening, it may affect that or some. I think, you know, the prudent thing for us to do, since the Red Gate's now under new ownership, it's not under that Arthur State Bank anymore. I know that the Dinkins have always been fine business people here in town, always cared about this town. And I've been here 35, 40 years myself. I remember them running businesses here. I think it's only prudent that we listen to what Marshall had to say, but not only that we listen, but we prove that we listen to our businessmen and women in this town, and I think we need to work with them.
Comment? Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, Councilman Bowman, I respect what you have to say, but unfortunately, I think you're absolutely incorrect. Mr. Cook, for clarity purposes, the letter postmarked August 18th, when was it received? August 21st or so? Okay. Okay. Mr. Cook, what is the legal requirement for us to give notification to a property owner for a potential rezoning?
Planning Commission, none. For the public hearing, 15 days. That being said, we generally post the property for Planning Commission to have that extra layer of notification early in the game. So specifically for a public hearing, that's when you get your posting. That's what the certified letter is for this meeting tonight. It includes the dates for the Planning Commission if it is in that time frame, but the public hearing is tonight.
So we are in compliance with our legal requirement to alert the property owner of a potential rezoning. Mr. Mayor and Council, in your packet there, Mr. Cook referenced Code Section 155.272, Application and Review Procedures, failure to begin, failure to progress, failure to complete, in regards to a PDD, or some people call it a PUD, a PUD. It states, and I will read it into the record, if the responsible party fails to begin, fails to progress, or fails to complete development as agreed in the descriptive statement, town council may charge the developer with a violation of the zoning chapter, may rezone the property, or may take any combination of these actions. In any event, if the planned development is not initiated within 2 years of its establishment, the Planning Commission shall, and that's the key word, shall initiate the rezoning of the property to an appropriate district classification in conformity with the comprehensive plan. Mr. Cook, it's been more than 2 years since this PDD was annexed into the town, correct?
Correct.
It's been 13 years. That was, I believe, 4,745 days. I believe that was the number you said. okay? And I understand your position. This probably should have taken place before you and your father, Mr. Marshall, acquired the property. However, I wasn't on this town council, so I really can't speak to them as to why it wasn't. If I'm not mistaken, when I was chair on the planning commission, we actually did initiate a rezoning of this property once before. Is that not correct, Mr. Cook?
There's discussion on rezoning, going back to December of 2018. The potential new property owner, before Mr. Dinkins looked at buying the property, initiated a rezoning. It made it through the planning commission, and it was withdrawn when it got to town council.
And the rezoning request was from PDD to PDD, correct?
Right, so basically just changing up the existing plan development district to a new plan development district.
But point of fact, this property, a rezoning request of this property has been discussed ad nauseum over the past 2 to 3 years.
Been discussed before the planning commission. 3 or
Maybe
4
not before
times.
council, but as a former chairman of the planning commission, I distinctly remember that we have had multiple meetings and discussions on this particular property.
That's correct.
How many times in the last 2 years has Redgate been on the agenda of the planning commission?
Probably 4 times.
Okay. Mr. Dinkins, you were kind enough to send us a letter, and your thoughts, and it addressed a lot of things you had to say. I would just like to address a couple of these points. Legally, we did notify you an adequate amount of time, and it's my position that it's not the town's fiduciary duty to reach out to a property owner, alerting them that there is potential rezoning issues. It's been in the newspapers, it's been in the planning, as a former chair of the planning commission, it is something that we have addressed. In fact, your real estate agent attended a meeting where it was discussed in December of 2018, where it was discussed a potential rezoning request on this particular property when it was owned by Arthur State Bank. Let's see, you say that there were commercial acreage that's being taken away from you. I disagree with that statement. There was an element of commercial in the original approved plan from 2007. However, that doesn't necessarily mean that there was acreage zoned commercial. The whole property was zoned PDD. Therefore, you can have commercial elements in PDD, but you don't necessarily have to. According to a definition of the PDD, it can be substantially residential or substantially commercial or a combination of both, more of a mixed-use type, think Lake Carolina. So the position that you're taking that commercial acreage is being taken away from you, I believe is just inaccurate. As far as not wanting to fight the bank with lawyers, I don't want to entertain that. As far as a compromise, and as far as what Arthur State Bank has spent on the property, that is immaterial in my opinion. As far as a compromise, I don't think that a compromise is I think it's doable, but I really think that we need to get through this process first, wipe the slate clean, and then start over. If you had a plan today, okay, but you don't, and it's my understanding that you don't exactly have a plan for the property. You just, you acquired it, and I understand the timing is interesting, let's just say, but it's not personal. It's something that's been on our radar for over 2 years. It's been discussed ad nauseum on the planning commission, and now it's finally worked its way up to town council. You said we had 4,745 days to get it right. Well, there was a Michigan man exonerated after 45 years in prison. That's 16,425 days that the state of Michigan had to get it right. So sometimes it takes people a little bit of time to get there, but we eventually do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Other council members? I stand in support of Mr. Dinkins. I think 90 days is what he's looking for to get this picture that you're looking for, Councilman Brock, asking for a little time. I think the southern portion and eastern portion of this property would be fine zone commercial because it will fit right in with what we're looking for at the whole northern part of the light industrial park. It just feeds into itself. Based on what he wants to do in D1, that's another conversation, but to get him to change his plat at the county level, come back and show us he wants that zone commercial, I think that's a doable compromise. I agree with Councilman Bond. Any other comments?
Well, if that's the case, Mayor, then we should just go ahead and revoke the section that states that there's any kind of time frame to rezone it, because if we're not gonna stick to our own ordinances, why do we?
Well, I mean, you kind of read them. Hesitate to read it again. But you said the planning commission shall, but the planning commission does not zone property.
I understand that,
This
and
coun-
they've done their
this-
job.
This council does.
Correct.
So they shall initiate it, but this town council does not have to act on
We don't, you're correct. They are a recommend.
it. So 90 days, I think, is not unreasonable for a gentleman who bought the property, right, wrong, or indifferent, did not understand what was going on with the property, because this town as a whole, and it was long before our time, did not do what it said in their ordinance and rezone it earlier. So to hold him accountable for misdeeds of the town, I don't think is, again, he's asking for an extension. He's not asking to go to court and change the law. He's let them come up with a sketch plan on what they want to do, and then we can look at it that.
It's still gonna require rezoning, sir.
Right, but he's got to show you what he wants to rezone it to. To arbitrarily and capriciously just make it D1 real quick, now that's going to be a lot harder to do.
We still have a second reading.
Right. We can defer the first reading, which is what I'm leaning toward. So be the pleasure of this board.
You
I have
know,
a question.
Councilman Sloan Griffin.
So, Mr. Cook, right now, as the property sits, what can the landowner do with that property
Currently,
without coming back to us or anything?
it'd be very difficult to develop it exactly like the prior owner or developer envisioned it, just because of several things. The economy has changed since then, the traffic has changed since then. To lay it out exactly like it was laid out then, which is what generally they would have to do, it's probably not going to happen. You know, basically, then you're looking in the ballpark of approximately 232 single-family units designed in such a way as was laid out in the original plan development. Potentially 300 multifamily apartment units laid out as it was originally laid out, and 30 acres of general commercial. A little more flexibility there, just because it was not laid out specifically where everything was going to go, minus the corner aspect. So ultimately, probably, other than if somebody came in and wanted to, put a, commercial use on that corner piece, Sharp Properties owns, anybody else that would come in and want to put any hard infrastructure back on the larger parcel would probably have to come back to council anyway. It'd probably be a major amendment. A major amendment would follow the same process of rezoning as we're going before today, as the prior potential buyer went through when they tried to go from one plan development to another plan development, here a year or two or so. So those are the options.
legally, we're within our right. Legally, the state of Michigan was within their right. Morally, they were wrong. They found out they were wrong 45 years later. Legally, they put a man in prison. Morally, he shouldn't have been in prison. So legally, we can do this. But is it morally right to hold us against them today when we failed to act on it for 13 years? Now, I know I wasn't here the full 13 years, but I've been here for 7, so I can put some of that blame on me for being here 7 years and not acting on this sooner. But why rush into it now when we got brand-new owners looking to do something? I think this is a solid compromise to give them what they're asking for and let Mr. Sharp and the Dinkins come up with the plan and then bring it in. I think it's the morally right thing to do.
Any other comments?
The only problem with it is the idea behind the ordinance that stated that after 2 years you would revert to a holding pattern was to prevent these undeveloped, multi-layered developments from just sitting on the books year after year, decade after decade, and then all of a sudden, the time is right, somebody shows up and boom, there's 300 apartments between Cobblestone and Muller Road Middle. I mean, quite frankly, Mr. Dinkins could walk out of here right now, withdraw his request, and take that property and sell it to somebody who could develop that plan as it's approved, and there's nothing we could do about it. There'd be, I don't know, 600 homes plus the whatever commercial acreage is in there. The idea is if you've got a plan, you approve it, you can't do it, you just take a step back, come back with another plan, and then go there. I think we're putting the cart before the horse here. I think we need to rezone it D1, put it in a holding pattern, have them come back with a plan and say, hey, this is what we want to do. And we'll say, okay, well, here's the zoning that you're going to need to get it done. Understand you're concerned about the commercial acreage that you're losing. Okay, come back with a plan that shows the commercial and then what you're going to do on the back end, and let's sit down and talk about it. You know, I'd like to see a plan before I vote to defer on some plan that may or not happen. It may happen in 90 days, it may not. But at least, at least I would say just roll it to at least the next month to see how much progress they can make. What's it going to hurt to move it forward and then vote it down next month? If we vote it down now, we're back to square one.
Mr. Brock.
Yes, sir.
Everything, you're making a great point over here, but let me ask you a question. In the event that we go D1, let me make sure I understand. We go D1, and they come back with a plan, then you're suggesting that we go back to another session of rezoning it from D1?
That's exactly how the law has intended that type of development to go. If you can't develop it at PDD, you rezone it to another classification in which reference the comprehensive plan, and then once a plan is developed, they bring it back and say, here's our plan, and we say, okay, well, it makes sense under this zoning. Because quite frankly, if he wanted to rezone those two large tracts of property, let's just say they're 70 acres each, and he wanted to zone both of them town center, I don't think anybody up here would say yes. I think you'd say nope, because you could put Target in there, or you could put whatever you wanted to put in there. You're very loose, there's very loose guidelines for town center other than complying with the BAR. But quite frankly, if we rezoned everything to D1, and then he wanted to carve out acreage on the front, you're gonna it would have to be resurveyed and subdivided, because I don't think anybody up here would vote for a split zoning parcel that's ripe with problems. Then come back and say, okay, I've got this parcel up front, I want to have it rezoned for X, then the parcels in the back, have them rezoned at Y, or leave them where they are, and that might kill two birds with one stone. But you have to go to D1 first. And I'm also reading the statute as it's been passed by prior council.
Mr. Dinky, did you get confirmation from Mr. Milliken about whether or not this property was already under rezoning? Either one of you, you've been doing the talking, so either one of you can answer it. Did Mr. Milliken tell you that this property was under rezoning when you bought it, before you bought it?
Right, did your real estate agent tell you that it was going underneath?
We get to the microphone.
He bought it as it was presented, as you saw it, like it is now. I've got the thing showing how the property was laid out.
Did your real estate agent give you any history that the property had been discussed for a potential reason?
Well, my father rides by that property for about forever. That's on the way to I-77. He's seen it for sale for years and years and years. You know, it's been for sale for years.
That would be, that would have been a planning commission meeting.
Mr. Mayor? I may just add.
Yep, please, Ms. Cook.
Just procedurally, since the planning commission initiated this rezoning, whether you vote on it tonight or you vote on it next month or 60 or 90 days, it would have to be voted on and disposed of in one form or the other, whether you approve it or deny it. I think we're saying the same thing, but just want to make sure for clarity that they would have to go through the process of rezoning. So if you voted at D1, they'd have to come back through and ask for what they want to. If you voted it down and believe it a planned development, they'd have to come back through and rezone it, potentially. Or they could just develop it, as it is zoned currently now. So, in a nutshell, what I'm saying is, what was initiated by the planning commission in some form or fashion has to be disposed of by the council with a vote up or a vote down, whether it's now or, down the road. We can't change it up midstream because of legal purposes of advertising and et cetera.
The way I understand it, you gave us three options. Option B would be the disperse of the action tonight would be to actually vote it down, but to instruct PC and the owners to come back and compromise and bring their plan together. That would take care of the planning commission's duty of following through with what they did. It would take us planning, doing the action on it, but what we would do would be deny it with the instructions that planning commission, the Dinkins, and Mr. Sharp get together and then zone it the way they want to zone it. But that would take care of the thing. It would, it's not quite 90 days, Mr. Dinkins, but it would almost accomplish what you want to accomplish. I think if that's what council voted on tonight, that's the way I understand it from you.
That is one of the options that would leave the current zoning in place and put the onus back on the planning commission to work with the owner on a compromise, and the owner would have to apply for the rezoning. Just hypothetically, say they wanted to cut out 30 acres along Blythewood Road and make that town center zoning and keep the rest D1, they would have to apply for that unless the planning commission circled back and initiated that rezoning themselves, which potentially they could. Not great in practice. It'd be better if the property owner initiated the rezoning after working with the planning commission. But that certainly would be an option.
Right. But if we approve it tonight, it's going to be suspended before this body to take the second vote at some later date, and the planning commission can't do anything.
Right.
So in order to get the planning commission to do this compromise, we'd have to vote it down tonight. Postpone it would not help the planning commission, and to vote for it would not.
That's correct.
And then the landowner can go back and get the plats redrawn at the county level. And then Mr. Brock said he did not like the dual zoning recommendation, so I'm gonna ask you, could he in fact come back and say, I want this town center, this strip, but the rest I want D1?
They could.
And then planning commission can see it at the same time. Instead of doing it sequentially, they do it simultaneously.
They could. They'd go to land surveyor, tell land surveyor, what they want to cut out,
Right.
acreage-wise, submit that plat for review, and it could be concurrently done with the rezoning.
Any other questions? Did anyone else want to speak about the issue that did not sign up? Please feel free to go to the microphone. Council members? Would be your pleasure.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve the amendment to rezone the 3 parcels in question. Oh, this is just a hearing?
Hearing,
Oh,
yeah.
never
It's a
mind.
public hearing now. We gotta wait a while.
Well,
Any other comments or
let's get to
questions?
it.
And we will move to number 2, Bethel Hanbury, an amendment to rezone portion of parcel Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium to denote a Class 1 property, historic designation in town center zoning. That'd be at 125 Boney Road, TMS number 15200-02-24P. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The base zoning for Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium would stay the same, town center zoning. It would append a historic designation, a Class 1 historic designation on the Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium. Historic designation, it's included on our zoning map. It follows the same process as a zoning map amendment or a rezoning would. The Board of Architecture Review unanimously recommended the Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium for historic designation in the property as Class 1 on 7/20/20. It has been determined by the Board of Architecture Review that the Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium meets the criteria for Class 1 historic designation as required under Blythewood Ordinance 155.540. Class 1 properties must meet a strict historic definition, and no changes shall be made to the site without prior expressed approval of the Board of Architecture Review. The Planning Commission met on September 16th of 2020 in a special called meeting, unanimously recommended to Town Council to approve the Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium, the historic site and building as a Class 1 designation. Mr. McLean from the Board of Architecture Review is here if you have any specific questions.
Before I bring them to speak, I'm going to ask Councilman Larry Griffin, so I'm going to give him time to think of an answer here, but put him on the spot. But I grew up here in Blythewood, and that was our gymnasium. It meant a lot to us. It was more than just where kids went and took their PE classes. It was a community center of sorts. Always had our Christmas concerts there. We had our Easter things there, activities. We had, a lot of the kids would come and watch basketball games and hang out there before Blythewood was as big as it is now. And so it means a lot to all of us. So when we first heard about the movement to preserve that gymnasium as a memory to many of us my age, it meant our youth, our school days, and our good friends that grew up here in Blythewood. It means a lot more to the man to my left, and so I want to get him to speak on why we need to preserve and why we need to make it a historic property here in the town of Blythewood. Councilman Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Although the mayor says that he grew up here and went to that school, for most people, they don't really understand and know that that school, and especially to me, because that was the high school, elementary school that I went to back in the 60s, because that was what was considered the black high school, black school, period. So that school, when they began to decide that they were going to tear it down, had very symbolic reasons that I'm fighting against, but they decided they were going to continue to keep the name of the school, Bethlehem-Berry, and that they were going to leave the gym as a historical whatever for the black people who I guess went to school there at one time. They have no interest in the building at all, but for me, that's a part of my history here in Blythewood and a lot of other people's history here in Blythewood, because that was the only place that we had to go. Now, when our mayor started going there, it was now integrated. And most people who move into this town have no idea that school was the black school. Because when they move in, it's integrated. Everybody sees it's integrated. But for myself, it's for Bethel, Hanbury, and for the McLeans, for Blythewood High, those were the schools, the white school and the black school. But once they converted it, and I'm glad that they're going to leave the gym because I think it is a historical part. It should be used as historic history. The amendment says they're doing the gym as well as the site that the old school sits on. That's going to be also. So for me, that's going to be a great tribute. I don't know what we're going to do with it and what's going to happen to it, but I think that's something that I would want to see happen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Sir, thank you. Other council members?
I can only agree with him.
No, not yet. Not going to vote yet.
I can
Just
only
any-
agree with what he had to say. It needs to be protected, needs to be here for future generations to learn from, and needs to be used when it can be for other activities. And I think we owe it to the town of Blythewood, we owe it to our residents to protect it.
I also have to echo Councilman Larry Griffin's comments. I have two children that are currently enrolled at Bethlehem-Berry. Very good possibility that one of them will be the last class, and the other one might be the first to finish at the new school. And I know we've had many Christmas concerts. I've actually seen you there, Mr. Mayor, where your son and my son are the same age. It also provides additional meeting space if we do end up acquiring it for town events, cultural, artistic, historical. It'd be a wonderful thing. The only question I have is, why Class 1 over Class 2? I've seen the scoring, I've read the scoring. I'm just curious as to just because it scores Class 1, do you have to rezone it Class 1, or could you do Class 2?
Mr. McLean, would you go ahead and explain the difference between Class 1 and Class 2?
I really didn't attend Bethel School, but I will say that other than building on what Mr. Griffin said, was that this site goes back probably to the late 1800s. Goes back to Bethel Church. Bethel Church was a brush arbor church. They started a school there at that site, probably somewhere in the early 1900s or late 1800s. And it's been one of the most important landmarks actually in Blythewood, probably one of the top 4 or 5 landmarks in Blythewood. And it certainly does deserve Class 1 protection. Class 1 has more teeth in it. It simply says that the building cannot be torn down, and it does it without council approval. And it's been, this recommendation started with the Blythewood Historical Society. It went to the BAR and then to the Planning Commission. But it is a significant site in Blythewood. It ranks with the Hoffman House, it ranks with Blythewood School, it ranks with Bethel Church, and also ranks with Samuel Level Church. They're all of equal importance, and those are the ones that are basically that are zoned as Class 1. Any questions about it, or?
Any other comments before we proceed, council members? No, later on, action items, this is just a public hearing portion. Moving to portion 3 of tonight's agenda, the presentation of new Bethel Hanbury School project update.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have some representatives here to just give us an update on the new Bethel Hanbury School project. I know it's a question that I get quite often, and working with the school district and the developers and architects, and they've been very helpful and willing to come speak to us today. So we have a presentation, so if you guys want to kind of give a quick update and any visual aids on the screen, just tell us when to go to the next slide.
Will do. Thank you, Mr. Cook. Thank you, Mayor and Town Council. My name is Will Anderson. I'm the Chief Operations Officer in Richland School District 2. I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of you at times and talking and speaking about this project and other projects we have with the town. And the school district is so supportive and appreciative of the relationship that we've had for many, many years, and excited for this really exciting project for the town and for the school district. So we're happy to be here to give you an update on where we're at. With me here tonight is our Director of New Construction, Mr. John Clayton, who's sitting over there. First up to talk about the design and where we're on the design process is our architect, Mr. Scott Powell, with Craig Galton Davis. And then we also have our construction team, Mr. Ryan Giles from Harper Construction, and Mr. Jason DeFranzo, I believe. Did I get that right, Jason? And who is the safety coordinator for Harper. They'll give you a brief update on when the construction will start and the timeline. And then we're happy to answer any questions that you have. So at that point, I'll turn it over to Scott.
As the architect, it's been my pleasure to design this new school. It's a 137,000 square foot new school. The drawing that's up on the screen kind of tells you a little bit about the phasing of the project. The school will be built behind, the new school will be built behind the existing school, really on where the play fields are right now. We have worked it out with Department of Transportation and all of our safety plans, so there'll be fencing, construction fencing will be going up very soon. Essentially, they'll be building the new school summer after it's done, summer 2022. They will demolishing the existing buildings and putting in the parking lot, and then the gym will be preserved. I know that's a question you got, but the gym will be preserved. Right now, the road will remain as it is. I know there's some desires to eventually straighten it back up. We have met with the Department of Transportation, and they would like to do a couple of turnabouts to slow the traffic down, so it's not such a straightaway, and that would deter speeding cars. But at this time, there's no funding available for that. It may be available by the time the project's done. If you can go to the next slide, the overall site plan. And so you'll see the cars will enter on the upper part of the site. That's our car loop. You'll go all the way down almost to the water tower to loop back in to get the required stacking to meet the Department of Transportation stacking requirements. And then the buses will enter on the south side of the site and kind of loop behind the existing gym. We've located the teacher parking within the bus loop, so it can also be used as parking for the gym. Should that road, eventually straighten out, there'll be parking on site for the gym that'll be preserved. Nice opportunity also that all the students can enter for one main entrance, whether you're riding the car or the bus, which helps for school security. And then there is fire truck access around the perimeter of school, but of course that would be gated. The school on the front part of that faces the road, that'll have all of our public spaces, like the media center will be in the upper corner, administration, guidance, our new gym to serve the students, and our cafeteria are all along the front, and then behind that is a 2-story classroom wing. Are there any questions about the site and how the building is placed?
You may not know this, sir, but I don't want to put you on the spot. The piece where the old school will be demolished, all inside of that roadway, do you know how many acres that is? 7.
Back and look, but I believe it's 7 acres.
Thank you. See if we can squeeze some ball fields in there. Will, I'll talk to you about it.
Yeah. So we did have some nice renderings to kind of give you a feel for what the school's going to look like. If you want to go to the next one. This is the front entrance as you're coming from the carpool side. You can see, again, the covered canopies for both the buses and cars to drop off with a nice central entrance that's easy to define. Next slide would be the rear, the 2-story classroom wings with a courtyard between the two, which could be secured, and all the kindergarten and first grade kindergarten classrooms would open up onto the secure play area. Next rendering. So this is kind of looking at it from the bus loop, and you can see the glass right there to the left is the cafeteria, and then the higher space behind it is the new gymnasium. And then this is it from head on, kind of looking at it from the existing school down the covered canopy that takes you to the main entrance. And this is just a bird's eye of that main entrance. So the space to the right-hand side of that entrance is where your administration area would be. And you can see the high volume beyond is the gymnasium. And you can start to see the 2-story classroom wing, and behind it, it also has some space and some nice collaboration areas for the students to allow a lot of natural light into the space. And this is a bird's eye. I sent a lot of pictures, didn't I? I didn't realize I sent so many. This is a bird's eye perspective from the back, looking at the 2 classroom wings and then how they adjoin that main street corridor that connects them. And this is an interior view of the cafeteria. So this is on the upper corner of the building, the media center. I'm sorry. It's on the upper corner of the building. We've got a little reading nook for the students, and some nice colored glass with lots of natural light and connection to the outdoors. I think that's it. Are there any questions?
Did you all have anything to do with Muller Road or Blythewood High School? It's very reminiscent of these pictures.
We did not.
Okay.
This is, I'm in Greenville, and so we've done our firm's done schools for 63 years, but this is our first opportunity to work with Richland School District 2, so we're very excited about this opportunity.
Thank you for coming tonight. We appreciate it.
Is there an auditorium inside the gym? Inside the school?
There is. There's a performance space, yes, sir. So there's a dividing wall between the gymnasium and a little performance space that has a platform there. It has dressing rooms, and it backs up to the music room. Yes, sir.
From a construction standpoint, they actually started, as stated, the construction fencing this week. They'll start the site work on the back of the school with steel site work here in the next couple weeks when the substantial construction will really take place closer to November. The school will stay in place while the current school, while they're building the new school. Mr. Giles, as I mentioned, is the superintendent on the site, so he'll be on site daily, making sure everything's working properly and staying safe. And Jason will be there as well as with the fencing. The complete separation from the people working. They'll work, normal hours, not to, and if anything does come up, of course, communication to make sure that there's no disruption to any events or anything like that. And as Mr. Powell said, we'll be looking to open the school with new students in August of 2022, and then the demolition of the existing school after that over the next 3 months, 4 months, and then the entire site will be complete. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you may have. And one other thing I failed to mention, we will do a groundbreaking once our communications person wants to make it look good, have some machines out there and stuff instead of just breaking ground with nothing there. So that'll probably be sometime in the winter. And as I think I've mentioned to Mr. Cook and others before, of course, the town will be there and everything like that. So happy to have you there. With that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Well, was this funded by that bond that we passed, the $500 million, or was this on the schedule before?
It was actually $468 million. No, I'm just.
I mean, you didn't fund my road, so I'm worried about that.
It was the
number one.
2018 bond referendum, yes, sir. This was part of that project.
Fence from the street back to where the new school is gonna start, how far is that?
From the existing street,
Yeah.
it's going to be a long ways around that curve from the driveways where the curve starts. That's where each of the driveways will be if you're coming from town or coming from above Boney Road from the north. I believe it's probably 1,000 feet, maybe less than that, maybe 700 feet. John, okay.
That's where the football field is now?
That's
Pretty
where
much
the front
where-
of the building is? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, that gives me an idea how far it is from the gym.
Yes, sir.
Then, question, I also see future two-story building addition on the site map, the future two-story.
That's just for potential if we ever needed to expand. Similar to what we did with Blythewood High School. We didn't think we would expand it, but we laid that out there for it to easily to put that addition there. So in case, who knows, whatever happened down the road, we want to at least be prepared for an expansion if we have to. So that's what that's for. But we don't have any plans for that, but we'd rather set ourselves up with utilities and everything else so that we could expand.
How many students will it house?
It'll hold 747 is the capacity. I let our education folks debate about what's the proper size of a school. I know Bethel Hanbury is overcrowded now in capacity, and you're probably thinking, well, 747 and we're at 800 now. So a rezoning will probably have to take place to accommodate that, but there gets to a point, and our district has decided 747 is that point where it gets too big to be an elementary school for proper teaching and learning. So there will probably be a rezoning. And as a reminder, the district does own another elementary school site might be in the town. It's on the corner of Fulmer Road and Blythewood Road. It might be
Just outside, but we're
just
gonna get
outside
it
the
in the town,
limits.
Will. We're gonna get it in the town. It's right out by the Dinkins house. I know where it's mine.
Right down
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Mulder Road, yes, sir. And so we do have the potential long range for an elementary school on that side of 77.
You have no idea what long range means? 5 years, 10 years?
It's all about where the growth is.
I get a lot of questions about that. And my next question is Grover Wilson High School. When's that?
It's all about the growth, so.
Is it?
Yep, so we're not gonna, we don't wanna build a high school may cost over $100 million, and we have 200 kids in the school. and that's not the right use of dollars. So we want to make sure that, you know, you'll see portables on campuses and stuff before that school breaks ground to really, you know, to make sure we're doing the best thing for the taxpayers.
Very good.
Thanks to Team for being here. Thank you.
Again, thank you all for your time and coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Now we move to item 4, discussion items, and we'll begin with number 1, the A-Tax, long-awaited policy revision. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Staff has created a set of ATAX guidelines and application procedures for the town council to review. And this is just kind of a starting point. The purpose of this, obviously, is to come up with some more formal guidelines and processes as we move forward and how we accept, review, and determine whether projects or programs are eligible for accommodation tax funding, and also how we review once they're done. So the guidelines and application that are before you today are draft and pending discussion, again, and suggested edits for you, from you. Staff has kind of put together, I know it's a lot, it's just, a good many pages. The state accommodations, when we talk about A-Tax, we're talking about state accommodations tax. Basically, how we deal with that money, how it comes in, how we spend it, how we report it, are very much strictly kind of parameters in place from the state on how we have to deal with that money. So we've tried to incorporate that into these guidelines, these applications as well. Specifically at state law, if you ever get really bored and want to look at 6-4-10, that deals with how the money should be allocated. That's under state law, 6-4-10. So what you see before you today is a lot of hard work of Steve and Sarah Lynn and putting this together. So again, trying to incorporate the state law and how we want to operate, trying to put some parameters on a timeline when people can apply or request for applications being due. And obviously, as a town, we want to try to tackle that ahead of our budget season when we're trying to figure out what we're going to do with our budget. So we try to incorporate that time as well. Just briefly, the Accommodation Tax Committee has an advisory committee made up of folks out of the hospitality, lodging, and one cultural liaison. That, as well, is dictated under state law. Every year, we have to submit a report to the state. It's called the Tourism Expenditure Review Committee, the TURC report. We have to show how we spent that money. And just briefly, I won't ramble on, but there's very specific parameters on how we have to spend that money. And we want to kind of make sure we get that right. Certainly moving ahead. And I think having everybody on the same page, this application and guidelines will go a long way towards that. So I'll stop talking. I know this is a lot of information. Again, it is a draft. You don't have to take any vote or anything on it today. It's just basically putting it before you. So if you'd like to give some feedback now or later, get with me and the mayor, and we can iron out the final copy for you.
What we've done for the general audience, Director Mr. Cook, to get the accommodations tax guidelines this month. Next month, we're going to see the hospitality guidelines. Then we're going to have a policy written based on those. Going to get the planning committee's involvement in it, other people to look at it and make sure it makes sense. One of the big issues I see now is the request closed on February 3rd, but then the grants are not awarded till June of 2021. I'm not asking you, Mr. Cook, I'm just kind of stating the obvious. So how many events do we normally fund between February and June that aren't going to have that answer? The first year is going to be difficult anyway because we're not going to have those revenues, and I've told everybody that will hear my voice, we funded everybody this year because we had the money. Next year is probably not going to come in as it normally does because this is when your lag is not going to catch up with you. The COVID crisis, hotels weren't housing people. People weren't going out to eat at restaurants for a long period of time. So we're going to have a very low amount of revenue generation based on that, in my opinion. So it's gonna be difficult this year. So those organizations who in the past have made money and made, or we don't wanna call it profit, what do we call it, Mr. Brock?
Revenues over expenses.
Over expenses. Keep those revenues over expenses to seed your event next year, because you may not get anything from the town when you come. But back to my point, between February 3rd, when the application period closes, we decide in June, or do we decide in, well, we could decide earlier than that, I guess. But are we gonna miss some right there? Are they gonna fall between the cracks? Because we're not awarding grants. And did they have an event between February and June?
So ultimately, they'll have to plan ahead. And really, the way it's broken down, just briefly, there are two things that are important. The 30% money, basically 30% of what comes in is for advertising and promotion. A lot of towns give that to one organization or two organizations, whether it be a visitor center, a chamber, convention center. They know where that money's going, so they'll budget for it, and they give that money. The 65%, basically, of those expenditures, more so are for events, and what we typically, Blythewood gives money for these various events. So that is kind of the balance. That is once you take the first 25,000 off what we receive, goes into the general fund, and then 5% of that balance goes into the general fund. Specifically, the 30% I mentioned, state law says we shall spend that immediately. So when it comes in quarterly, we should be, sending it back out the door, which is easy to do if you, give it to one or two organizations, because you know who's getting that. The 65% has to be spent within 2 years. If it's not spent within 2 years, you're supposed to ask for an extension based on a specific project. And again, that's part of the accommodation tax reporting form that we have to do every year. So again, there's some ironing out there, procedurally speaking, that needs to happen. But with that being said, people are going to have to, when we implement this, people are going to have to do a little forward thinking and planning if they want to apply for the funds.
Any comments, Councilmember?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
Mr. Cook, Sarah Lynn, and Steve, thank y'all for working on this document. This is something that I think when I first come on the council, I was actually looking at is formatting processes, dates, and just having useful information to put in hand. I think this will be a great packet to put in folks' hands that's looking at coming into town, holding events. So I want to first thank you guys for working hard on this document. I like the fact that, we are riding with the dates. And I do think that event planners will have to plan forward, to look down the line. So some smart planning there, but I think that for us to have this, give some leeway from December the 7th, February the 3rd is enough time to get your ducks in a row, to format everything like you want it. My first question will be term limits. So for the advisory committee members, do we have term limits set for those folks?
Steve? No, sir, we don't.
We don't.
So how are they selected?
Their career field. I think there's a statute. Is that right, Mr. Cook?
Basically, apply, and
But they have to be from hospitality industry, hotel industry, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
that's correct.
So that limits us right there.
It's laid out under
I think
state law.
within the town limits, you only have so many. I see your point, where you're
Yeah.
going with this, but
So as far as, I know we talked about it at one time. Oh, no, hold on, first, the percentage, the rules of how we're going to disperse funding. We got it set in this document at 80-20 on page 3. At the bottom section. Part B and C, we have it set at 80%. So anyone coming before will get that 80% in 7 to 10 business days. And then that 20% will come 60 days after the end of the event or project, after the report is submitted. Is that straight from Richland County's, layout, the 80-20?
It is. Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve. It is.
The 80-20 split.
Is the 80-20 split coming
Yes.
from Richland County?
From Richland County and most other,
Columbia does the same
Columbia,
thing.
Charleston, Greenville.
But let me
Now,
point out,
the-
let me point out before you continue, Councilman. It says it will be determined if the additional 20% will be distributed.
Yes, yeah.
So if they ask for X dollars and you give them 80% and they make their event happen and they have no further expenses, there's no reason to give them the 20% after that.
And that was gonna be my next,
Oh, go
because
ahead.
when they
Sorry, I
bring.
stole your thunder, Dave.
No, you're good. Because when they bring the documents back in to you, Steve, the receipts and everything should be, presented in the packet.
That's
To
right.
determine if they need that 20% to pay out any outstanding
Right,
debts,
we
correct?
require them to submit a final report with their budget and how they spent the tax funds and receipts.
Yeah.
It's the same thing we're doing now.
Now, one other thing that's different in this document from a Richland County, a Greenville, Columbia, Charleston, is I believe that they do a 50%. Is that, the 50% of whatever you're asking for is funded?
Richland County does, but it may not be on state aid tax money, it may be on hospitality tax money. That they will only fund 50% of the expenses of any particular project or event.
And how are we defining a tourist? Did we put miles on a tourist? And I see it says outside town limit.
Right. Every municipality and county kind of has a different definition of how they define a tourist. I think in the Turk documents, they say 50 miles. I've seen 10 miles, 20 miles. That's an item up for discussion for y'all.
That's one of my big ones here that I
Yeah.
got wrote here is, I feel like we need to really define, a tourist.
Sure,
I
absolutely.
mean, anyone living just right down the street back behind us could be a tourist by this document. coming into
That's
the
correct.
town.
That's correct.
So to get a return on funding, I think a tourist need to be set. I think we, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, just, I wanted to add, this is from the frequently asked questions from the state's website about that. It is defined when we're talking about a tourism-related expenditure. That's not exactly what you're asking. The definition for tourist, again, from the frequently asked questions, it basically says, class is fogging up here, that a tourist is generally one that comes from 50 miles outside of their homes. However, the committee looks at every event on a case-by-case basis. That's underlined in bold, that they look at every event on a case-by-case basis. The committee considers any project or event that increases visitors to the region or boosts the economy. So the real answer is it depends. We probably need to find a ballpark idea. What 50 miles may work for Columbia is going to be different than 50 miles from works in Blythewood. So that's why they give that kind of latitude, the state does. So again, I just wanted to read that straight off their website.
That's what I was, thank you on that. That's all right now,
You can
Mr.
define
Mayor.
that, I agree, good point. I mean, Sumter's 50 miles.
Yeah, I mean,
You'd have to be outside of Sumter to be classified as a tourist. Yeah,
we need to figure out some mileage in there. I think we're gonna get folks right outside the town limit coming in, but we're trying to attract someone to come in from Rock Hill to an event. That's right. And to stay. Somebody 2 miles or right down the street's not gonna stay at the holiday. So,
Great points.
thank you, sir. That's all right now.
All right. Move to the second discussion item tonight, public safety, Councilman Eddie Bolton.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just want to update council and the mayor and our town administrator. I think I've kept them in the loop. I appreciate the McLeans being here and any of you town residents that are here tonight. I'm sure you've seen the same problems that we're having around town. I don't know if it's all COVID related or it's just kids aren't in school and they just have too much free time on their hands, but they travel these roads at high rates of speed. Just in the last couple of weeks, we've had 2 major accidents right here, one right at the park where, 2 kids had to get transported. Had one right out on the other side of Blythewood the other day, outside by other side of Sandy Level, overturned vehicle. They just don't regard the speed limits around here, and they're endangering younger people. They're endangering our senior citizen population here. They're trying to get in and out of their driveways. I asked Mr. Cook to look at some options and the mayor to see what we could do to address this. I've spoken to several other residents here in town, and I think one of the things which brought it, which is a good idea, I do think we do need a citizens advisory committee to come forth and work with the town on how to proceed. But before we even doing that, I think we need to look at the feasibility of getting an IGA with Richland County to where those deputies are dedicated solely to traffic control while they're on duty, that we pay them because we don't have a police force here to do that. So I think that's the first thing we need to do, because we have just got to control what's going on within our town limits. And it's not just here on Sandfield Road. I live on Boney Road. It's down my way too. I see it on Blythewood Road. I see it on Langford Road, Reimer Pond. There's no area in our town limits that are immune to this right now. And I'm sure you've seen it all. Even our park is not immune to vandalism by young kids, doing donuts on the grass, on the athletic field, in between the parking lots. I mean, they're on camera here and they get caught and they make restitution and they do the right thing. But the thing is, if we could do something short of, I don't know how we would hire our own police force, but I do think an IGA with Richland County and set some time limits where those deputies would be on duty either in the high traffic areas, residential areas where we're working on people. But just to see young kids being transported, helicopter land here in town and take a young kid out because he has to be cut out of a vehicle and flown to the trauma center. I don't want to see anybody have an accident, and I sure don't want to see one of our children, one of our friends' children die in an accident here in town. I don't want to see one of our elderly residents get T-boned trying to get in and out of their driveway. Short of having some kind of social awakening here in town, I do not know how to control what goes on with the speeding and the motorcycles and everything else, the loud, the noise ordinance. There's cars and trucks with mufflers that don't meet the noise ordinance. We see them right here when we had the Purple Heart dedication, in town hall trying to do something outside. You can't control the train, but when you get a car it almost sometimes they do it knowing that we're out there having something to do and they know they can be a disruption. And it's, short of just hiring a police force, I think we need to pursue the feasibility. I think we have the money that we do an IGA with Richland County to start with and then look to something further. But we have got to protect our residents here. We've got to protect our young as well as our senior citizens. And we've got to do something to protect these children that are the ones doing it, speeding up and down the road. I mean, will a ticket slow them down? I mean, if they get a ticket, will that slow them down? I mean, obviously the accidents aren't slowing them down because, we were all young once. When I was 17 years old, I was bulletproof too. But, a vehicle is nothing to play with. And I mean, we've all got children. We raise our families here. I just think now's the time with the way we're trying to grow and with the more houses coming into this town and more businesses coming in, new school being built, we need to put something in place to protect those that are vulnerable here in our town. And that deputy that's on duty could patrol the park, could patrol other areas. I mean, it's more than just traffic control. I think the presence of a deputy during those high time areas like that where we know the problem exists would actually slow things down. So I'm asking this town council, I'm asking the citizens. I appreciate the McLeans being here and everybody else being here. I know that I'm probably not the only one that sits up here that's heard from phone calls from people and gotten emails from concerned residents talking about the exact same thing. The speed, the noise, and just the total disregard for safety is something that we need to address. We don't need to sit on it. We don't need to sit on something for 13 years. This is something that we need to actively pursue and address this to protect the people that that are living here and are paying to be here, supporting our businesses. We just, as a council, owe it to them and to do something to try to curtail this or put a stop to it.
Any comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Go ahead, please, Mr. Grove.
I concur with you on that, Councilman Bolton. We need to, we don't have a IGA for the Sheriff's Department. I put out a survey on the Nextdoor app a couple months ago because I ran on that concept of looking at public safety, trying to capture a holistic picture of the town and the way we're growing. Now, I got some humongous pushback from the public safety column because it is gonna cost us money. It's gonna cost us money to do it right. We don't wanna jump in and half do it. Let's jump in and do it right. We can mitigate several things if we, come up with a plan. I'm looking at the fire IGA. I asked Mr. Cook, it's probably been, over a month ago now? I asked for all copies of the IGA. In the fire IGA, 1990. So we have a lot of work to do when it comes to public safety. And you were still in the fire service in 1990.
Yeah, they've actually signed a new contract. I mean, the IGA's probably in place, but they've signed a new contract with the city county as far as.
Yeah, the
unified
city
fire
county
service.
signed it, but this is our copy of it, which was 1990. And it ran out, I think it ran, Mr. Cook, correct me if I'm wrong, it was to continue to roll, but it was for like 20 years on it. So, but it is out. So we do need to really focus on creating the committees and things in place. One thing that I wanted to look at, and I think that me and you would, coming from the fire service, both of us, and I'm still in emergency management, is to put together a committee, get with Sheriff Lott, consult with him on it, and see where he feels that Blythewood needs to focus on. Because his department, his deputies are the ones that are responding to us. They're seeing the growth from Blythewood. So I think that getting him on board to sit down and meet with us, to let us know where we should be focused from a law enforcement standpoint, I think will be smart. I don't think we need to pursue a traditional public safety setup where it's fire, law enforcement, and fire. I think we get a great service from our local fire department, EMS here. Even within Cobblestone in my neighborhood, we have the gate issues fixed now. So the ambulances and fire trucks can get into the neighborhood now. So I think that I seen by working with that we were detached from Richland County, where they thought that everything up here, we were great. But when I start making those phone calls and getting them to come out to look at the gates, to test the gates in Cobblestone, we found so many cracks in that barrier, to the point where we're now fixing them. I mean, we had residents, just so you all know, we had residents out there that were waking up at 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, running to the gates with their gate card, because they hear the squeaking from the ambulances trying to sound the boxes to get in, and they wasn't working. So yes, we as that neighborhood just don't have a problem. We have a problem in Blythewood with it, and as we continue to grow, we gotta catch up with it. We need to get ahead of it. So I'm willing to sit down and work with you, Councilman, and anyone else, let's make those phone calls and set up these committees.
Thank you.
All right, and I will say, Sheriff Lott does lean forward. He spoke to me in November after the election. He spoke to me last month. He's worked with, his staff's worked with Mr. Cook in the past, and when we did complain the first time about speeders, he committed to increase the route here in Blythewood on Sandfield and other areas. I'm sure he'll do it again. I know he's aware of the accidents that happened recently, so it would be very good, Councilman Griffin, for you to reach out to him. But he's always open. He put his, do his substation right here on McNulty. He loves Blythewood. He always supports us. Y'all see him at the Christmas parade every year. He's a big fan of Blythewood, so I'm sure he'll lean forward in assisting us. Before we talk about standing up an entire public emergency department here, because as you know, that's going to take a big tax base. That's going to property tax and millage on the people of Blythewood. So I think the best bet would be to establish some sort of intergovernmental agreement and pay for one or two deputies' salaries part-time.
Well, I'd like for us to kind of pursue that with this
Yeah.
department, with Richland County, get Mr. Cook to
Absolutely.
kind of pursue that and see what we can get started as soon as possible.
Just to kind of give you an idea, I've reached out to a couple municipalities of like size. And, the average cost of a department, small, in our size, would be about $6 to $8 million a year. So it would cost us to continue to run in that area.
That's why I think the IGA is the way to go. If we can get a couple of deputies and let them patrol dedicated strictly to the town limits and the residential areas. For now, till we can come up with a base to get $6 million a year.
You gotta follow my annexation plan.
Yeah, that's
You
right.
get it.
Well, then you're going to have to put millage on all the people inside of it. Anyway, well, good luck with that. It'll be long after I'm gone.
But
All right,
this
is that-
this is a fix we can do now, I think.
That's right, I agree. Work with the sheriff there. Moving to item number 5, action items tonight. We have citizen testimony regarding action items. We've already had a citizen speak. Action item number 1 is the first reading of ordinance 2020.013, an amendment to rezone property located at Blythewood, Muller, Syrup Mill Roads, TMS number 15100-10-01, TMS number 12600-02-01, and TMS number 12700-01-21. Had discussion. Mr. Sharp, please, sir.
After a little further discussion, it seems to me like what you're saying is, if you vote this down tonight, we just come back before council again to reapply for zoning change. Is that correct?
Before the planning commission.
I
You'll
mean,
go
before the
them.
planning commission,
It could be as soon as their next meeting if you're ready for that.
correct. So this will not delay my project and also Mr. Dinkins' project. Is that my understanding?
Well, what'll happen is the planning commission will, let's say it happens. When's the next planning commission meeting? The first Monday in, next Monday. Is that right, Chairman? So you probably won't be ready then, but next Monday, the planning
Right.
commission meets.
We could present something too.
Okay, and then they would take another vote,
Correct.
easily, they could vote, and then it would come before this body next month, the fourth Monday.
Right. And my
And-
parcel's just a whole lot different
Yes, sir.
than his parcel. Mine's just a smaller parcel there, but he's got something there that really, he will spend some time on developing and get to you folks there. But in my opinion, I think we'd be better to vote this down tonight and then let us come back before the planning commission. That's just my opinion. Mr. Dinkins?
We also feel the same way. If we vote this down, we can get to work right away with the planning commission and get a plan together that, number one, the planning commission would be okay with, so they could present that, I'm assuming, to you all later. Is that correct?
Right, it'll be 1 month from today, the fourth Monday of October. unless it's a holiday, but. Right, well, I'm saying it's gonna be hard for them, but.
Yeah, we would support voting it down and get ready and get to work.
Mr. Dinkins.
Either way, if you're not ready, that's okay. The point is, you have to go back before the planning commission, who meets the first Monday of every month. And then it would come before us after that, which would be the fourth Monday of every month.
Mr. Dinkins, Mr. Sharp, if I may, you're going to have to come back for a rezoning request regardless, unless you want to develop the property as it is approved. For Mr. Sharp, that would probably be okay. For the Dinkins family, I can't speak on behalf of you, but it's been that way for 13 years and hasn't a single ground of dirt been broken. What the idea behind this was is to give you a clean slate, a start over, a reset. 30 days, 60 days, I don't believe will actually hurt you. In fact, you say that if we vote it down, you can start working. If we approve it, you can still start working. We're not delaying or prohibiting you from developing any kind of plans.
But you would delay. I have to interrupt. You're adding
How so?
months and months to their
No, I
time.
disagree. You can
Okay, if
still
we voted,
develop
let's say we
plans.
vote yes tonight. Another month will pass, we vote yes again. Now it's D1. Now they have to start all over and go to the planning commission. That's another month. Then they have to come here again another
They've
month.
got to do that
and another
anyway,
month.
sir.
So it'd be 6 months. No, they could do it right now.
Larry can start working on his
Here's where we're getting hooked up. I think this is where we're getting wrapped around the axle. Nobody says you have to zone it D1. Nobody says that. You can zone it right the way they're gonna ask when they present it, and you've rezoned the property. You don't have to go to Z1 to make a clean slate, D1. You go with what they recommend and the planning commission sends forward.
And what if the plan commission says, no, we don't
Right,
recommend
well,
that?
then that's possible.
I think we should.
But if
I
the
think we
planning
should
commission
do a
says
reset.
no, it'll still come before this body for a final vote. They'll just recommend no to it. I mean, what we're talking about is saving time, man. I'm talking months of time.
And I
That would
think-
be the benefit of doing what they're proposing.
I think Mr. Sharp's ready to start moving forward and getting stuff done over on his. He's already been making
All
improvements.
our site work is already done. Off-site detention is done. All the curb cuts have been approved by DHEC. We are waiting on DHEC with the final drawings when they widen the road, so it doesn't alter our curb cuts. Everything we've got's already been approved. Even I've submitted plans to architectural review, and those have been approved. Part of my delay was different. At one time, we were not able to get any water from,
Winsboro, that's right.
Winsboro. Then the developer was gonna put in a sewer system, so we were gonna be a party to the sewer system. So that delayed us there. So now we've been in, like I said, then you got in 2008 and 9, you had the economy that fell apart. Now you've got the highway department that can't give us curb cuts. I mean, the curb cuts are approved, but they can't tell us exactly where to put them. So that's when one of my delays is kind of like the widening of Blythewood Road. Right in front of the IGA, they're gonna take most of that property in there for a roundabout. Okay? That's already word, and they're gonna widen it. They don't have a clue when they're gonna start. So all that property is just sitting there, and I can't do a thing. I got 3 parcels, and I can't do a thing with it. So, you know, if they sit there another 3-4 years before they decide what to do, what am I supposed to do if I've got plans for that? I've got people that are interested in buying that property. They can't buy it. They don't have a clue what's going to be there. It's going to be a roundabout, it's going to be 5 lanes, or is it going to stay where it is? The last conversation I had with some of the folks said that they may put this project off for 5 years.
So that would prohibit you from developing for 5 years on that corner?
Would you buy it?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Not with that big question mark on it.
I'm not going to develop it either.
Well, then that just furthers the argument of it's not gonna hurt it to rezone it to D1 and let them go through the process.
He's referring to a different piece of property right here.
I'm
He's
talking
talking
about a
about,
different parcel altogether.
But that widening of Blythewood Road goes all the way down to Surf Mill, correct?
Yes.
Oh, that doesn't touch your property, it stops right there. Okay, fair enough. Little confusing there, okay.
Any other comments? Looking for a
I'll
motion.
make a motion, we deny the rezoning request.
Second. It's been probably motioned and seconded to deny rezoning request. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No,
Mr. Yarborough, can we have a roll call, please?
Oh, this is for not to approve,
He recommended not to, to deny the request and send it back to the
Which
planning
keep it
commission.
the
So
same
A
way.
vote to
Yep.
yes would be to deny it, a vote for no would be you don't want to deny it.
so it stays the same.
Yes.
It would stay the same. It would
No.
go back down and stay the same.
no,
Yes.
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 Thank you, gentlemen, and the motion is denied. Moving to item number 2, the first reading of ordinance 2020.014, Bethel Hanbury, an amendment to rezone a portion of the parcel Bethel Hanbury Gymnasium to denote a Class 1 property, historic designation in town center zoning. Property is located at 125 Boney Road, TMS number 15200-02-24P.
Make a motion to approve first reading.
second.
Been probably motioned and seconded to approve the first reading of ordinance 2020.014. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it. First reading is approved. Item number 3, boards and commission reappointments. Gentlemen, I have before you some vacancies, some terms that are expiring, and these individuals have asked to be reappointed, which would take them through September 30th of 2023. And these people are Edward Kessler on the Planning Commission, Miss Erica Page on the Planning Commission, Pat Littlejohn, the Board of Zoning Appeals, Tom Utroska, Board of Zoning Appeals, and Sharon Pickle, the Board of Zoning Appeals. I tell you, these volunteers have done yeoman's work and very astutely taking care of the interests of the people of Blythewood. So I put before you a nomination of all those to serve another term.
Mr. Mayor, are these re-ups essentially?
They're all reappointments.
I make a motion to approve all 5? One motion?
So probably motion and seconded to approve all 5 reappointments through September 30th of 2023. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. I want to publicly thank them for serving another term. We appreciate it. Moving to item 4, Dominion Energy LED Conversion Program. Mr. Cook. Now, are you working part-time for them? Because that was a great presentation. All right, so let's talk costs now. I know you know this. It's more upfront than normal, but over a long term, the bulb's gonna pay for itself. Is that correct? Okay.
Mr. Cook, what would be the cost to actually make those changes to those current 55 structures? Is there any upfront cost for this? So there's just $45 a month savings. Doesn't seem like a bad deal.
Better light.
Will those lights also work in the park?
Do you already have LED lights out there, Steve, in this park light? I thought it was LED bulbs out there. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it go out too fast.
Yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to grant town administrator approval to discuss LED conversion program with Dominion Energy.
Then probably motion is seconded to delegate town administrator authority for the LED conversion program. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, motion passes. Item number 5, Historical Society request for Veterans Day event. Mr. Hesteroff.
Yes, sir, thank you. Historical Society Museum wants to kind of have an expanded a Veterans Day event, the day of the project, November 8th. You've had a chance to look at their application and their budget. I did meet last week with Hazel Kelly and Margaret Kelly, kind of start talking about logistics, and everything's still in process. But the general plan is to have a vintage car parade, possibly military vehicle parade, military vehicles, in the park just as a display, and then also have some exhibits and memorials and displays for the general public and also for the veterans in our community. Going to reach out to some local restaurants to see if they'd like to provide some food, music. I know the mayor is working on getting some speakers and possibly a band. And this will be a nice community project to commemorate Veterans Day. You see their budget, they're asking for $2,000.
Be a great event this year. It was so large last year, they decided to reserve the amphitheater for this year's event. Lends itself to the Circle Avena Haygood, so we can have a little parade. The veterans and the cars can go around. And then there'll be tables up in a flag retirement ceremony hosted by ours truly, the Mayor Pro Tem, over in the Farmers Market field. And veterans will have access to documents, programs, literature from sources like the VA, the Big Red Barn Retreat, other pro-veteran nonprofit organizations who offer services to veterans. So I think it'd be a great event. Again, we'll be observing COVID social distancing and make it as safe as possible, but help us get the word out to celebrate our veterans here in our community. And we did budget this $2,000.
Yeah.
So,
Mr. Hestrock, is there a representative from this, from the, who is this, Historical Society other than Mr. McLean? Ms. Franklin? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I think, I echo what the mayor said, I think this is a great event. My father is a veteran. And I was just also gonna say that if they need another warm body to serve on a committee, I'd be happy to volunteer my time. Yeah,
Make a motion to
I'll
approve.
second.
It's been probably motioned and seconded to approve $2,000 for the Veterans Day event hosted by the Blythewood Historical Society and Museum. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The ayes have it, motion passes. Any open citizen comment this evening?
Mr. Mayor, can I make one more comment, sir?
Please,
If
Mr.
there is
Brown.
no open citizens to speak. I just think that with the current tools and procedures that we have in place, that we as council should, or at least you and Mr. Cook, work toward opening town hall in some capacity, following CDC guidelines. You know, we've got more information. We have, you know, Mr. Councilman Sloan Griffin has provided adequate amount of supplies, in my opinion, to start moving in that direction and starting getting the town back in the business of running the town.
And you mean more so open than it is now?
My understanding that it's still closed.
There's somebody there every day.
Well, yeah,
At
the
some
more,
point.
the
You
more
mean
so
all
open than it
day?
is now.
Okay,
yes.
that's what I'm
I
referring to.
didn't realize that we
Yeah.
had, I guess we have a soft opening. How about a grand opening,
Absolutely.
a grand reopening?
Go, Mr. Cook, please. And we'll look at that, Mr. Brock, absolutely. Let's work on that tomorrow and make sure, if you want to work with Mr. Cook, make sure his schedule has it all covered. But anytime I've ever come up here, they're up here. I do want to go back to Veterans Day. I didn't make it clear. November 8th is a Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. or 2 until it ends. But it's only going to be a couple, 3 hours, and we'll be here in the amphitheater. So I just wanted you all to put that on your calendars. Sunday afternoon after church, come out and support our veterans. Any other open citizen comments? Go ahead.
On the 11th,
What's that?
on the 11th.
The 11th's on a Wednesday, so we didn't want to do any, and it's hard, people working. And
So you're gonna put any,
yes, ma'am. Oh, I thought you were going to answer his question. Oh, okay.
you gonna do your fireworks?
Oh, no, can't. We're going to figure that out, but we can't.
Might as well wait till New Year's,
No.
man.
And before you, I do wanna mention that the museum, the Historical Society, will be having a Phase 2 opening on the 4th.
Yeah, 4th of October.
Yes.
That's what you were going to say, Ms. Clank? tell Sheriff Lott exactly what you just said. Absolutely right. Thank you. Any other open citizen comments before we go to executive session? All right, this time, and we're not going to make any decisions during executive session, and we're only going to come back and adjourn, so feel free to leave after I read this. Section 30-4-70, Alpha Number 2, discussion of negotiations incident to proposed contractual arrangements and proposed sale or purchase of property, the receipt of legal advice where the legal advice relates to a pending, threatened, or potential claim or other matters covered by the attorney-client privilege, settlement of legal claims, or the position of the public agency in other adversary situations involving the assertions against the agency of a claim, specifically recreation project, contract, funding, and legal issues. Do I have a motion to go into?
Motion.
Second.
Been probably motion seconded to go into executive session. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. We'll take a 5-minute recess.
All right.